Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on the mindset for martial artists, and I suppose that's been going on for centuries. What kind of mind frame are you in when you fight, or need to be? And I think primarily because it doesn't matter how experienced or skilled or conditioned or tough, whatever you might be. On the day, if your mind fails you, you're dead. And so it's always been a problem in the martial arts. And for martial artists, is their mind going to be in the right place at the right time? And I should imagine, well, I don't imagine, but I think it's a fact that warriors, if that's the word, or fighters would have been drawn, or would have naturally been predisposed to fighting. Those more predisposed to fighting were from violent backgrounds of some time, or lived in violent environments. And what were you saying about that thing of, what was it, your scientific, what was that book, the magazine? Was it Scientific American? What's that magazine you get?
Scientific American.
Yeah, Scientific American did. I don't know what date it was, but it had something on the study of children who'd been abused or been raised in violent backgrounds, and that the amygdala and hippocampus, those areas of the limbic system, had been actually shaped by their life's experiences in early childhood, and they were more predisposed to being able to deal with usually aggressively within a hostile environment. You know, so they were more. It wasn't a case of genetics, it was just a case of the nurture actually producing the mindset.
During that developmental window.
During that developmental window. And so that was the problem you were saying was, you know, like myself, I was beaten as a kid. And I had a lot of high sensation experiences, if you like, had a lot of fights. And so that aggressive mindset's already, that ability to, you know, whenever I'm driving, I'm always scanning, and whatever I'm doing, I'm always scanning the environment. So because that's part of that mindset, being able to scan for cues of danger, and be able to interpret them and decisively act upon them, even though there might not be much information there. And some people would call that paranoia, but I just call it survival. You know, I would call that just a survival instinct. And I suppose that's it's trying to, how do you get that mindset without actually having to undergo that early childhood development, as for example in Sparta, where the kids were put out, you know, at around 11 and trained, you know, often violently. So how do you get that mindset without actually doing that to, you know, your children or to yourself? You know, as if you've grown up in a nice middle class.
It's too late for me.
Yeah, it's too late. So how do you do it? So the only way you can really do it, and because you can't rely on your past experiences, you know, as whatever that shape is, whatever experiences you've had, you know, as a high sensation seeker myself, I couldn't, or somebody who's got what could be called a predatory instinct, or that natural born killer kind of attitude, is, or having dealt with certain emergency situations, I couldn't rely on it. I've realised that, and that you've actually got to identify what the components of that mindset are, and then go about realistically trying to train them. And I suppose that in the armies, modern armies, say the last war, they did a research, and it wasn't conclusive research, you know, because it's just, as you always say, it's what is it?
It's a statistic.
It
can be interpreted a lot of different ways.
Lots of different ways, but the implication of that research seemed to suggest that it was a very small percentage. They gave a percentage of 2% that were willing, if you like, or capable, or even enjoyed actually pointing the rifle at a target and killing it. You know, and we've got him locked in.
Take a break. Yes.
As you get those who are going to obviously enjoy pulling the trigger, and those who obviously feel it's their duty to pull the trigger. You know, what you could, I suppose, term a psychotic or partially psychotic type.
But the surprise about the research was that it was that most of the people were either firing the wrong way or running away or not firing, and
they weren't willing to.
Not capable of actually killing in the crunch.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why you get that kind of like with this Yahara thing, is that people are trying to find out. They're martial artists and they're trying to discover if they have got that, if they can be discompassionate, if you like, when they kill.
Yeah.
But there's certain, I think there's certain amongst us who know that you're capable of doing that.
Yeah.
There's a predisposition within elements of the society, I believe, who can, if they find it necessary, can do that. I think there's those who don't understand that and actually just go out and do it to gratify that. Those are the psychotics. You know, they've got no actual frontal control over that limbic system. And I suppose that is the whole point, is that somehow you've got to balance this. You've got to somehow arouse this animal, but equally give it direction and not brutalize it like in the Japanese last war, where now they just kill indiscriminately, women, children, babies, whatever. So there is how do you actually involve the frontal lobe? How do you involve this frontal cortex area? How do you actually have this awareness of what you're doing, while at the same time having the aggression, the violence to actually do it, and to do it in what you believe is a justifiable way? That's the problem, but that's training. I suppose where they, before in prior wars, they would have naturally drawn from those members of society who were predisposed to this violence.
Well, presumably, the further back you go in history, the more violent
it would be,
and harsh. We live in such a soft society now in the West, so maybe it's becoming increasingly a problem. I mean, even when you watch the programs on the military when they're training them, it's so much softer than it was even when you were a boy in the army.
It seems to be, and what I know that my father, what I know, watching my father train men, so I know that for a fact. Well, I don't know it for a fact, but I think there's a different direction in warfare, and I think that probably the difference, you can draw parallels between modern warfare and training as a martial artist, but we've got to remember that the real distinction is that you're not killing at a distance. President Bush can sit in his office and be a warrior and kill at 1,000 miles.
And go to bed at night
and
have a good sleep.
And have a good sleep. He doesn't have to come eyeball to eyeball with anybody. So a soldier, in a way, is a little different. Training a modern soldier is a little different to training a soldier